I do a photo shoot at least once a year. There was a year I did it twice. Now, one of those was a boudoir photo shoot. So we'll just leave it at that.
TMI, are we recording yet?
Can you see the picture?
Are you showing us pictures of you in your underwear? We don't want to see your underwear, Gina. We don't want to see your underwear.
You mean you don't want to see my pants?
I mean, Susanna, speak for yourself. If there are lacy garments involved, I can support the art is required to put together a boudoir album.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay, but I'm keeping my pants on. What was I going to say? Wait. No, I was just going to...
I'm definitely in the right spot right now.
Amy, welcome to the Women Your Mother.
She can't get away. She's on the call. There's no getting away now.
What a great... No. It was like, I must have told a bunch of my friends, like it was the name of the show, and I definitely had seen it and noticed it. And so sign me up, count me in. Like, obviously my people are here and I'm honored to be here and I'm excited. So yes.
We are so excited to have you. And I'm going to get this right because I went to listen to your show on purpose. Amy Hrehovcik.
Oh my gosh.
That sounded hot.
No, it was good. It was good. Like Susanna, I had to make peace with my last name being butchered in the second grade, or else I would like never move past anything in life. So it's like not a thing for me, but that was flawless. That was perfect. That was perfect.
You try it, Susanna.
Okay.
Try it.
I wrote it down actually. Amy Hrehovcik.
That's it. That is it. That is it. So
not only do we have English.
Who did it better?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I gotta give it to Gina, because Gina, first of all, she went first. And so I'm a fan of first movers. But also it was just the confidence that was brought to that final syllable. It was...
Wait for it. Those people who are listening who can't see this on camera, you were missing Gina's disgusting smug smile after you just said that. Ugh, that smug smile. She won. But next time I will win.
Well, I also had the advantage of I am the performer in me, which I'm super excited to talk to you about, Amy, because I just feel the creative vibe coming from you. The performer in me, and Susanna probably could agree to this, but I don't think Susanna listened. I listened to one of your episodes so I could hear you say Hrehovcik. And I am one for trying to mimic sounds. There we go. There we go.
Well, I particularly loved your LinkedIn tagline, on a mission to bring more joy. On a mission, that's so awesome. On a mission to bring more joy. And there's a little picture of a fairy there as well, which makes it even more cool.
I actually did a post about this recently. So that fairy, not many people know this. I have lost count how many times in my career I've been told that I'm a natural. So much so that when people, of course, it's always in the context of why someone can't do something or why something doesn't scale, right? Because, you're a natural. But when that comes up normally in conversation, the post was pretty good. I went line by line about all the things that I did and gave up while learning how to sell, including music for a damn year, so I could listen to books in my car exclusively for a year. But anyway, so when people tell me this, I have them come in. I'm like, you want to know what the secret is? And they're like, yeah. And so everybody leans in. I'm like, the secret, it's pixie dust. I don't leave home without it. And so that little fairy is a tag. It's like a double entendre of, cute little emoji that you can throw in your name, as well as a dig on that there is no such thing as a natural seller. And that if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes two to raise a competent seller. Ooh. And there's no shortcuts.
Ooh. Pixie dust. I want that.
I love pixie dust. If I could sprinkle pixie dust on everything, I would.
Right? Gina, your thing is sprinkles, isn't it?
What?
Your thing is sprinkles. You've been posting a lot on Instagram, like, what do you call them? Like the rainbow colored sprinkles that you put on like cakes.
You're talking
hundreds and thousands or something.
You mean the things we put on ice cream?
Yes, those things. That's your
sprinkles.
thing.
Are they sprinkles? Yeah, are they? They're sprinkles.
You can sprinkle them if you want,
Yeah. Anyway, I'm totally blanking out on that. But yeah, I like colorful sprinkles like unicorns and anything sparkly. But now we're just going on crazy tangents. This is what happens on this show. So let's get serious for a second. It won't last very long. But you are on the Women Your Mother Warned You About episode podcast sponsored by Sales Gravy. So powered by Sales Gravy. Thank you for Sales Gravy and Jeb Blunt for giving us this platform. And Amy, just real quick, I'm just going to read a short bio on you just for our listeners. And then we don't know where this show will go. We never do know, just so you know that that's just the way it rolls here. Susanna likes to try to hijack it, so that probably will happen. So a little bit about Amy before we get started. Amy is a revenue human for life. I need to know more about that. After selling enterprise tech for a decade, Amy pivoted to sales enablement, where she built out 2 sales enablement departments. Way to go. These days, Amy is on a quest to sell ideas. Amy is currently part of the Andy Paul team. Totally stoked about that. And hosts her own podcast, Revenue Real Hotline. And boy, does she have a voice for podcasts. And when she's not working, Amy can be found at the beach with a book.
Yeah. And if you see me at the beach with a book, definitely do not come up and talk to me at that point. But you can find me on LinkedIn at any other time.
What beach are you at, Amy? I want to know.
Ladies, you got to put this. So if you got your phones in front of you, I'm in Seaside. I'm in the Jersey Shore, but put in I guess I'm telling everybody right now, but it doesn't matter. But 206 Surf Drive. Just give you an idea.
206.
As if yeah.
Well, at least she was. Now you might get stalked.
Well, I'm just down the road from you in South Carolina.
Oh,
just down the road.
I definitely have a Northeast, dare I say, Jersey girl to Gina. I'm a little surprised to hear that you're down south below the Mason-Dixon line, but what are you going to do?
It's so funny you say that because people mistake me for Jersey all the time. And I think it's the hair.
It could have
and the Italian. But I'm actually from Chicago originally.
Okay.
But I did recently play a part in Tony and Tina's wedding as Tina's mother. So I had to spend a little bit of time in Jersey.
You got the twang down. That was good.
Imagine I had to do that for 4 weeks. And it was really, by the time I got done, I was like, who am I?
Oh my God.
I just love all your accents. I mean, I can just pretend and put on my American accent. It sounds the same to me, but you all sound brilliant. Is that really offensive? I don't know. But I'm Gina's looking offended. I'm keen to know. I'm keen to know. And from you, what is Revenue Real Hotline? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so that's my show. That's my podcast. And the theme of the show is conversations about uncomfortable conversations in sales or revenue, really. The show is designed for the experienced seller. And so for a couple of reasons, when I look at all the content that's out there for salespeople right now, the majority of it, 90% focuses around prospecting, right? How to open up opportunities, which is important, right? Obviously, that's a massive part of the job. However, there's a lion's share of mastery that's required to move up the ranks, right? Of AE, and as you're moving from transactional, mid-market, whatever, through to enterprise. And when I really sat down and thought about, okay, what is the common denominator? What is the thing that I could focus on and help people to work on that translates right across all those things? And the conversation, right, is where it's at. And so the conversation, at least from where I'm sitting, it's the building block of all relationships, right? It's how we experience the other person, and it's also how we experience ourselves. And if you're doing it right, selling, that is, there's always an element of discomfort to it. And so that's a big part of the show. But then the other half of it, it was there's a ton of topics that we don't really talk about or don't talk enough about. And mental health is just a perfect example, is one of them. We're starting to see that change a little bit. And so I figured 2 birds, 1 stone type thing. And yeah, so the show's coming up on its birthday. It's 1-year birthday. Ooh. Season 2 just dropped. We're on I think I was just working on episode 43 for tomorrow. And Gina listened to the first and only, actually, at this point, solo episode. So most of them have been like conversations, but so I'm starting to incorporate like a lot of experimentation, different types of conversations, and episode formats. And so, yeah, that's the Revenue Real Hotline.
I love that.
It's my baby.
I love it, especially because you talk about uncomfortable conversations. I'm all about the discomfort and getting comfortable with uncomfortable, which would be my background in improv. And like, I love the messiness of the discomfort. And to the point of, reading that about you, I'm like, I was having a thought about it. Like, I feel like conversations shouldn't be uncomfortable at all. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird about this. Like,
well, okay,
why are they even uncomfortable?
This is great. Well, you did listen to the solo episode, so I got into that one because, but anyway, Susanna, I was raised by a VP of sales, right? And so I've back to the two younger sisters, one of whom is actually a comedian, Gina. So like we could talk about the improv and using humor.
Nice.
But my dad, when we were little, like I remember I have these vivid memories of being asked at the kitchen table, when did we feel butterflies in our stomach that day?
Interesting question.
And so, I know, but like obviously it was an age and gender appropriate analogy, but the connection there was butterflies equal discomfort. And if we didn't have a story to report back or a moment during our day where we felt uncomfortable, then we were reminded, some days softer than others, that all growth takes place outside of our comfort zone. And so for me, like, I mean, talk about the type of person like you that turns you into when you are brought up that way during your developmental years. But like, I learned how to not be afraid of them, to Gina's point, be afraid of it. But I also, and to like take stock, like how many times did I feel uncomfortable today? Like think about that. But more importantly, to reinterpret it and to see it for what it truly is, which is a vehicle for growth. And now marry that with a career in sales. I think a big part of me, I just was always so great at the uncomfortable conversations, or got really great at them after a long time. And then you go back into the real world, or I look at my trajectory with like relationships outside of work, and it's like, there was definitely a comfort gap there.
Yeah.
Where I felt so much more comfortable with it, but it took me years to realize that the resistance there was, again, just based on that delta on how comfortable we both felt about like an identical event. And I'm going to pause there.
Oh, my shattered nerves. Everything. I can see Gina's face as well, because we're both kind of like, I'm thinking all these different things right now. But genuinely, in life, relationships, management, whatever, and maybe you could argue, without offending the English people, because Gina and I did a whole podcast on English and American styles, it could be argued that sometimes English people are we discovered are very scared to offend. And I see this a lot with friends, managers, when big problems happen because they just didn't have that difficult conversation, which could have been solved really quickly. Like a friend, her godmother moved in with them because she didn't actually feel that she could say, actually, we'd rather have the space. And godmother moves in and suddenly everyone's hating everyone and this beautiful relationship turned horrible just because they didn't have that easy conversation, which felt very difficult. So love what you say.
Wait, I want to back up for a second, Susanna, because you hit something there. You said they didn't have that easy conversation that seemed difficult. Like that's sort of where my head is. Like I look at it as like, this shouldn't be a difficult conversation. It's just a conversation. Like why label it at all? Because when we put that label on it, we're making it more difficult than it needs to be.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
We label it because it takes the scariness away.
Okay.
And which is also that's a little hack there. I spent a lot of time with cognitive behavioral therapy. And so when you label something, right, the power evaporates. That said, I think that we avoid, maybe a better way to phrase that is if we reframe what we're feeling, that label that we put on it, right?
Yes.
And so I think that we we tend to see that initial conversation with the aunt and the friend as being conflict.
Yeah.
Or we interpret it as being a conflict-esque type relationship. And also the natural tendency when we are looking at something that's maybe not easy to do is to avoid. And so with the uncomfortable conversations, it's extra easy to avoid. But I love, actually, it's an older book. Have you guys ever, or gals ever read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team?
Yes.
I haven't.
And this fake kumbaya, right, is actually a fucking, are we allowed to curse on here?
Oh, you can say fuck all day long.
It's actually a fucking dysfunction. And so the aspiring to not rock the boat because it minimizes the conflict without acknowledging, obviously, the storm that's brewing underneath, and obviously all the damage that comes by not eating the frog.
Yes.
When it's right there.
Well, this is how this show got started, Amy. We're in our 3rd season.
Okay.
This is Susanna's 1st season, but this show started 3 years ago. And the reason why my original co-host and I started it was to rock the boat a little bit, because we got tired of people telling us how not to rock the boat, how to rock the boat, which way to rock the boat, what day to rock the boat. Like, we got tired of trying to be everything to everybody, and suppressing who we were. Right. So that's what kind of got all of this started, was to get out of that dysfunction, which sometimes could make people like that, like us, like me. I don't think Susanna as much as me at this point. Where she's a rebel, but in a package that does not look like rebellious.
It's the accent. It's the British accent.
I think that's what it is.
It's all matter of sins.
But it's we didn't want to be that proper, like the 5, just like exactly what you're talking about.
I can relate to all of those sentiments, including this is why we start a show. And I think for me too, personally, it was one, if I'm being honest again, it was a big practice, a deep practice exercise for myself. And I think of where, society is at, right? To broad brush it or whatever, take a step back or go a little broader. We're all out of practice, right? If we can all each run a Google search right now and we'll get the results based on what we're most likely to click on. And so that we can look at social media, right? Pushing us towards sameness, right? People that already agree with us and have similar backgrounds, have similar ideas, have similar values. And we've been almost insulating ourselves from the tumultuousness of the differences, right? For good cause. However, as I said, we are all out of practice, myself included. And so what are some of the types of conversations that we take on the show? I mean, I've had all manner of interactions with buyers. So someone recently, the last episode I recorded, it was a boss that professed love for a female seller. And there's stories of, there was a guy that in Chicago, actually, Gina, was broking into an inner city community, and the team did not want to pay him on a deal that he brought in because the company had like bars on their windows. I mean, just like really raw conversations. And I mean, I have people now that are submitting like podcast idea concepts, like they're like going back and revisiting a conversation with a hard conversation that you had many years ago to see how time has impacted the perspective. And so, yeah, just across the board. And obviously we get into a lot of the practical aspects of hard conversations and selling, like discovery. One of my favorite episodes is with Jeff Bajorek, right? Jeff Bajorek does discovery, and we go into, why are we in such a rush to get through the discovery conversations? Same thing, Marcus Chan, we got into contracting, right? And the length of time that it takes to move contracting from start to finish, again, just because we tend to delay the start of that legal conversation. And so, yeah, we're really across the board over there. But I've learned so much. Like, I ask everybody at the end of the show, what's the most uncomfortable conversation you've had? And one piece of advice about uncomfortable conversations. And it's even in just a year, it has absolutely impacted how I approach them, how I prepare for them, how I assume positive intent. Like, I mean, it's just a whole host of things that I just never, I didn't consider going into it, but now like this is certainly the path and I'm not letting go.
And here's some words from our sponsor, Jeb Blunt at Sales Gravy.
Hi, this is Jeb Blunt. There's a reason why thousands of sales professionals and top companies across the globe hone their sales skills at Sales Gravy University. You see, Sales Gravy University is different than most learning platforms. First, we have live courses taught in a virtual classroom by our master trainers that start almost every single day. And our e-learning platform is populated with hundreds of hours of sales training content produced by some of the top sales trainers in the world, including Gina's spontaneous selling course, which is worth checking out. Now, I've got some good news. If you've never taken a course on Sales Gravy University, if you're a new user, you can take your very first course for free. That's any course on the platform, absolutely free. Just go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com, or click the e-learning tab in the top menu at salesgravy.com. Pick out your course, and when you check out, use coupon code FREECOURSE to get that course for free. That is free course to get your very first course for free.
So obviously, we're desperate to ask you.
Yeah. Woo-hoo. Let's ask you, what's been the most uncomfortable conversation for you?
And we want pure honesty here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's the only role of my show is that you keep it real. So I'll bring that here.
Real.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about the one that's hard right now. It's the negotiation. It's the money conversations. Like I am unraveling some. I'm like all of us, right? You identify a trigger or whatever, something that you was a blind spot, and now you're aware of it. And so learning how to lead with value, understand what my value is, and then how to price projects, right? How to have that, okay, how did it go? How could I do better? Bring it back to the money. And so I'm in this right now. Like I've found a financial coach that I'm working with on like the mentals on the money. And it's very different now than it was like negotiating for deals, right? Because that was someone else's service, that was someone else's money. Mm-hmm. And so now it's like, as I'm growing my own business and projects and like how to scope them, whatever. But these are, I had one today and I got up from the chair and I walked around the corner and looked in the mirror. And I used to do a lot of public speaking. So I have this tell where I'll get blotchy, and it starts on my chest and it like grows.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. Yeah.
I so anyway, walked around the corner
and my blotch was literally up to the bottom of my nose, like bright red. And I don't know if the conversation, it went great, right? It didn't, that we certainly made progress, but I would have liked to see more progress in that. But anyway, yeah, these are fucking hard conversations right now. How much is this work to you? What kind of budget do you have? Like, how quickly would you like these results? And then negotiating up from there. Yeah.
I've got a question. What are you afraid of?
Ooh.
What's your biggest fear that when you're having these conversations?
The project goes away.
So it's that fight or flight, right? The amygdala sets in. Mm-hmm. So what techniques?
And you not giving the value.
Not giving it, or maybe like not having seen it. I don't know. Like I've identified that I haven't given it a couple of times or haven't started with that. But the reason that I'm down this path is I've just noticed like this terrible habit of undervaluing the work that I'm doing.
Interesting.
Have you figured out where that's coming from?
I'm starting to unravel it. I had, I guess, Gina, no, to answer your question, I don't know. I don't want to say like imposter syndrome, nothing like that. Cause I know that the results are going to come. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think this is and I know, Susanna, you had something. I mean, I did not mean to hijack you, but this, I think, is such an important moment right here because you are not alone. Like this comes up so much for so many people. And sorry, guys, I'm not trying to make a sexist thing out of it, but over time, because I've coached a lot of women in my career, it comes up for women more than men from my experience coaching. Yeah. I've seen this and I've coached probably just as many women as I've coached men. And there's something around that worth and value that we get stuck in. And it's interesting because I've had the similar kind of experience. I'm sure Susanna has too, but I was selling myself for at least 12 years before I joined Sales Gravy. So I've kind of had this opposite thing happen. That's not really the opposite, but the point is that I got to Sales Gravy and started asking for way more money in sales conversations because I'm representing Jeb.
It's easier.
And it wasn't representing myself anymore. And I was like, this is so fucking easy.
Yeah.
Why? Now, okay, granted, Jeb Blunt is Jeb Blunt, right? He is Jeb Blunt. I'm not, and this is not, okay, so I got to be careful with what I'm saying here. At the same time, right, I'm selling someone in a more celebrity status, let's put it that way, right? Who has a bigger, further reach.
I feel that. I feel that with Andy. Like, I know exactly what that means. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so for some reason, I was no longer fearful of asking for money. And I'm like, and it's funny because I have acquired clients for Sales Gravy that I have been trying to acquire in the time I ran my own practice for 12 years and never landed those, but then landed them 12 years later for way more money than I had ever. Yeah. And I was like, what is this about? So I put all that out there and dumped all that out there because I think everybody can relate to that. So if you're selling yourself, sometimes it feels like a harder sell. But let's just say you work for a company and you're selling the company. At the end of the day, we're all selling ourselves and we get stuck and fearful of asking for money because we are still attaching it to ourselves, even if it's not us that we're selling. Sorry, that was just a really
I'm going to
tangent.
play devil's advocate because I don't do that. Like, since I've had my own business, I have been more greedy than I've ever been. I hope none of my clients are listening to this, but I put my rates right up because I worked out that translates. Maybe it's something to do with my kids and feeding them. I feel like I'm accountable for them or something. I don't know.
Minor detail.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's valid, Susanna. I think that's valid.
Shop at, you don't have Tesco's over there, but I'll eat at I'll have the cheapest stuff ever. I haven't got expensive taste, but I will bum up that cost. I'll be like, that's my money. I want that salary. But I back myself with the value because I think, well, if no one's complaining, right, then it's okay. But then with other people's stuff, I'm more careful. Isn't that weird?
It is weird. And we're all special snowflakes, Susanna.
We're all beautiful fairies.
We are with our own brand of pixie dust.
Pixie dust and sprinkles for everybody.
So you asked Gina wisely if I got to the heart of it. Like, I think for me, part of it was like I don't want to bring it back to the gender thing either, but this is absolutely a gender thing because women are socialized to be nurturers, right? We're supposed to be selfless and to give. And I think that that's a piece of it. Depending in your home, like the men are the one, it's the guys handle the finance and the money. And so there's this skill aspect on that piece of it. And so it could be perceived to be unladylike to ask for payment. I don't even know. It's just like, it seems so ridiculous, like saying it out loud, but like, these conversations, have been hard.
How many people?
Just because I'm so aware of the conscious incompetence, the 4 phases of learning, right? I'm very consciously aware of all the room for improvement.
But I bet you could think, like, how many people and how many women, for example, and friends do people have who say, oh, my husband really annoyed me, or he did this, or this happened. For example, my baby woke up in the middle of the night, so I got up. Well, I just get a bottle of water and I put it over my husband's head and say, it's your turn. And I get it done. But I seem to be very unusual. No one else seems to do that. A lot of women are just like, they have a moan, and I'm just like, why don't you just have that conversation? So do you think that's a woman thing? Like,
so I'm not a mother here, and I'm walking directly into talk out of my ass, but my sister just had a baby, and I was really like, she made the decision to bottle feed. And she describes her reason for doing so is because she wants Dan to to have the experience of bonding and feeding Bianca as well. And so same thing, like we did our first, I think it was Christmas or Thanksgiving. And like, we finished eating and like, she was like, yeah, get your ass up and like we were picking up dishes too, because I want her to see both genders, like all parents participate in the cleanup. And so I think that she's very unusual, as is Dan. But I don't think that I have a lot of friends too that report also having these conversations with their significant other multiple times and things don't ever change.
Yeah. So back to sales here, because Gina will tell me off for digressing.
But I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's about relationships, personal or professional. I look at I'm always giving analogies in sales that go back to like day, and I too don't have children. But I am about to have a stepson soon. So I'm trying to like teach myself how to be a stepmom kind of thing. But I relate everything back to relationships. At the end of the day, that's what sales is about, right? It's about relationships. And if we're struggling personally with how to have relationships, chances are we're struggling with how to have relationships in sales. That's just my 2 cents.
You think? I don't, well, but in all seriousness, like I'm just starting to come to terms with the personal relationships that I put in jeopardy while learning how to sell and learning how to balance the emotions and my own neurodivergent brain, ADHD. And so like, I'm just starting to talk about it, but now though, I guess so back then I felt like I was very good at forming relationships, professional relationships, but the personal relationships were way harder. So not to say that my experience is universal, but like, I don't know. I thought it was the work ones were always very simple.
Well, I think the work ones are simpler on the surface because we may not get as emotionally attached. But I think if we're good in the personal ones, we're going to be better in the business ones. So not taking away from, do you know what I mean? Like I've just noticed over time that the more I've mastered being a good human in general, personally, has a huge impact on how I do in business.
Well said.
That's my 2 cents on that.
I think it's well said. Casey Graham, I'm laughing about his LinkedIn post too. He did a post recently. So he just also wrote a book, the No BS Sales book, something like that. They were the only, they used a launch team for the book launch, which we were looking at for Sell Without Selling Out. But anyway, so Casey did a post about how people have like a big event in their life. It's like a disrupting event, and that people that he almost puts people into 2 categories. It's like them before it was pre-event and then post-event. And so I think that and the post-event, there tends to be more humility, right? Because there may have been a getting knocked on your ass for your event. And so I think that part of it comes as well, like humility and, understanding that, or remembering, right? If I imagine a hyphen in between, remember that we're on this planet for one another. And so that ability to bring the relationship front and center too, I think is a big part of it.
It's so interesting. I love these polls that you can put on LinkedIn. And I put something up the other day saying, do you feel more excited by business relationships or by personal relationships?
Oh, I forgot to get back to you on that. You did message me about that.
No promotional reason, just being curious, really, because I realized some of the people I really love, like on a day-to-day basis, tend to be people I work with. And the type of bond you get with them is just so magical. So I was asking myself that question. Guess which one more people said, personal relationships or business relationships? Do they value more?
Personal.
Business.
Ooh, wouldn't you like to know? It was actually 70% personal, 30% business, but I was surprised how many people said business. And the great thing is about those polls on LinkedIn, you can see who said it and you can be like, oh, that's interesting. But it's so fascinating, isn't it? How humans can value different relationships in different ways, and how some can mean more to some people and some can mean more to other people. What are you? What are you,
really
Gina?
thinking.
Come on.
Got me thinking now.
You business?
What am I?
You made a face. You're
personal.
And what about you, Amy?
Personal.
Which one do I value more? Personal. But I'm with you, Susanna, that they're commingled now, especially like I do a lot of work in community too, right? So Sales Hack Community, Rev Genius, Salescast.
Nice.
Revenue Humans podcast. And so there is a melding there for me of like the friendships that form. But yeah, no, I think it was Clayton M. Christensen. I found this. I didn't find out it was a book until later, but it was the first essay that started Harvard Business Reviews on managing yourself. You know how they do those must-read series? So making an effort to go through all of them. The first was a Clayton M. Christensen, which is the dude that wrote The Innovator's Dilemma. He just passed away last year. The essay was called On Managing Yourself. Or no, that was the book. But anyway, so it gets into how will you measure your life? And I read this 2 years ago. I was actually in Senegal on the beach over there reading a book. But it was, how do you measure your life? And it physically altered how I thought about my relationships and the people. And literally from that moment on, like I just set out to do better, to do a lot better. And plus, like I'm a recovering perfectionist. I've been sober for all of, 10 hours, but also like a business, being a workaholic was one of my forms of kicking the can on getting healthy. It was a coping mechanism or an unhealthy coping mechanism. And so I feel for the people in your survey that one strikes me as they're still a little earlier on in their journey. They haven't gotten there yet.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? And I guess it comes down to what's important to you in your relationships, because a big thing for me, because I'm kind of on the fence, you might think I'm one way or the other, but I'm very much on the fence, which is why I put out the survey. And I think for me, I've learned that when I've got respect for someone, right, real respect, that is when I start to really open up to them. And that kind of coincides with personal relationships and business relationships. Amy's looking like she disagrees there.
No, I don't. I'm thinking about how sales is the second least trusted profession on the planet. And like what your take is, ladies, about that. After, by the way, being a lobbyist. And that was going to be my first career path. I wanted to be a lobbyist. So really? I don't know what that says about me to hit the bottom two, the least trusted professions. But like, why do you think that is? Why are sellers not doing a good job on the relationship front? If we're to believe a lot of the buyer reports that are coming out right now, buyer sentiment, that all says almost all of it is pretty like we could do better.
I think in this world, as it is now, where we've got social media and we've got all sorts of ways of having quite casual conversations with people on a day-to-day basis, we can get by socially without having deep confrontational conversations, or we can ghost someone more easily maybe because we're not sort of face-to-face with them as much. So people are getting less comfortable with having those difficult conversations. It's becoming something they can avoid more easily. And I think because they're avoiding it, it's not that muscle that's being exercised. So, and essentially the less you do it, the more uncomfortable it feels and the more you can run away from it. Again, email. You don't have to have that synchronous conversation, so you don't have to see their reaction. So it's easier to hide behind emails. You see in lots of businesses. So I think that's part of it. What do you think, Gina?
I can't even wrap my head around it. Like I'm still trying to, the question is, how do we get better, and why are we there? And I go even further back, because for the longest time in my career, and I'm older than both of you, I'm sure, I avoided being in sales because I didn't think I was a salesperson, because I saw sales as a sleazy kind of non-trusting kind of, and I'm like, that's just not who I am. I don't fit that box. But people kept trying to recruit me to be in sales till I finally acquiesced. I'm like, what is this? And it came down to the feedback I got was people felt comfortable with me and they wanted to buy. Like I've had people say to me, like, what are you selling? I want to buy something from you. Like literally someone came out and said that at a networking event, like, I want to buy something from you. And I'm like, so I'm having a hard, yeah. So it's hard for me to answer that because I don't feel like I fit a stereotypical box.
Have you read any of these? But so I'm still talking specifically this year, any of the buyer reports, what buyers are saying, any of the sentiment type stuff?
No, share.
Irate. Irate would be a good way to describe it. Irate. And then there was at one point, I was doing a side by side. It was I think it was Salesforce, the connected customer. And then it was how your buyer, maybe it was also a Salesforce report. So, and I'm a data person, right? So I sold information. I'm very methodical with due diligence and the sources and the methodology, whatever. These were two good ones. It was the buyers, 98% of them, something crazy, were feeling like a number, reported feeling like a number. And it was something like 75% of sellers thought they did a great job of connecting with buyers, which is the first phase of what I would call selling in. And actually, in Andy's book, which is incredible, he breaks down the 4 pillars of selling in. The opposite of selling in would be selling out or being salesy, right? So abusing persuasion, right, is a great example. Connection, first one, curiosity, understanding, generosity. Ooh. And again, so 75% of sellers think they're great at connecting. 98% of buyers are this is atrocious.
So the perceptions on both sides are different.
So connection, curiosity, generosity. What was the other one?
They go in order: connection, curiosity, understanding, and generosity. Okay. And so if you think of how they build on one another, you have to master connection before you get to a point where you can demonstrate curiosity to the point where you're given the accurate answers that you can then derive meaning from, therefore understand someone. And he breaks down the perception on both sides, right? So it's not only what does it do for your career to be able to understand your buyers, but how about this? What does it feel like to be understood, to be seen, to be validated, and to be understood? And so I joke because it's I hear all this talk about differentiation, but it's not very hard to differentiate when you're giving buyers that level of experience. But anyway, so back to the original question, which is why is there such a lack of awareness on the current state of affairs across the business of sales?
Well, I think there's some lack of emotional intelligence in some cases. I've witnessed this where the multiple stakeholders involved in a sales situation, and a salesperson getting frustrated with it. And one of the common denominators in this example was that many of the stakeholders involved were actually fairly new to the organization. And so my aha was, hey, did you ever think about what's going through that stakeholder's mind, right? And there's several of them. And I've had this too with a client where literally we were mid negotiations when all the players changed. And all of a sudden it's you
got to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, because somebody, there was, the decision maker at the top who then, delegated it to the next level decision maker, right? So the game changed because the players changed, but the deal was still on the table. But what slowed down the process was that all these people were new, right? And it was frustrating for another salesperson involved in it, where they're like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. And it was a really frustrating scenario, but I had to pull myself back, which I think this is where we can sometimes fail as salespeople. I had to pull myself back and go, all right, let's just stop for a second and breathe. What is the common denominator here? And what I found the common denominator was that all of these stakeholders were fairly new to the organization. Well, what comes with, right? This is the improv in me where we drill down to the universal truth of a situation. I'm like, all right, common denominator. They're all new. What does that mean? Let's think it out. What do new people do when they join an organization? What emotionally are they going through?
They're drinking from a fire hose. They don't know anything yet, so they're in conscious incompetence. They're probably doubting their own skills, and the organization, what the hell did I get myself into? Because it's new and different. They don't know the players yet. A lot of uncertainty. They've probably had some experience purchasing a software in some other place. So the buyer's remorse and or they don't want to make any mistakes because they're trying to demonstrate their competency. Should I go on? Or is
yeah. I mean, it's right. It's all of that. And you're walking into an organization, trying to look like the proud peacock that you want to be on the surface, but down underneath the peacock feathers, you're kind of like a baby chick, terrified. And it's hard to get you to make a decision. And there's 3 other of you in the process. So it's a consensus kind of deal at the same time. And it's maddening. And so as the seller, you got to like create some objectivity and be like, all right, what is the issue here?
That's the money statement right there. How do we move to objectivity? How can we, so this is Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. An event is just an event. How we choose to interpret it is everything. And Gina, you're shaking your head because I know you just listened to this episode. I just did this one. Yeah. And so it's our job as sellers is to get to a place where we're able to interpret these events as objectively as possible. I think as humans, frankly. And so, but that's hard to do. It's hard to do. It is
hard to do.
But it starts from when we're children, as we always say. And I think a lot of that comes down to your mentors, your teachers, your parents. Someone was really horrible to me today at school, Mum. Gina bullied me today, Mum. What are you? And Mum has a choice. Mum either says, oh, that horrible, mean Gina, why was she mean to you? Or Mum says, did you do something to upset Gina? Let's talk about this. So you're educating the child to start thinking what could have made that person. So looking at behavior as something to understand opposed to something to react to, which, if you can teach kids that from a younger age, they will often look at things more objectively. I think.
So true. So when I think, I just read something this weekend, friends, and I want to share this just because it's my version of the answer to the original question right now, or another piece of it that I hadn't thought of. So this was actually, I think it was BuzzFeed of all places wrote it. It was an article about trust, and it was a Black gentleman that wrote it. I'm pretty sure I saw a PhD, so it was a big name. But anyway, the line was that hit me like a ton of bricks, is that our baseline right now is mistrust, right? Everybody's like, nobody, it's like, here's your blank sheet of paper. Let's kind of go from there. That's not where people are starting at in most instances. And so I think that we can all do a better job of especially the sellers, right? Of keeping that front of mind, right? Whether somebody's been at the organization for a short period of time or they're just living and operating in 2022, right? Look at what's going on right now. And so I think that we can all do a better job to bring more empathy and grace, not just with our buyers, but also with our colleagues. Positive intent.
Yeah.
What would it be like to not have an opinion right now? Cliff Notes, it's absolutely liberating.
Well, I can't believe that like nearly an hour has gone by and we sadly have to wrap this up, but I feel like we need to have you back on a regular basis because there was so much more I wanted to talk about. And this was fun with you.
You have a great energy, Amy. We love it.
This is amazing. Ladies, you have me at hello.
Oh.
You have me at hello.
Well, we would like to have you again from hello.
I love that you disagree with Gina as well, by the way. Sometimes it makes it very interesting.
I mean, please disagree because give me something else to consider and think about. Right? Like that's the whole point, right? This is why we started this conversation about, right? I don't necessarily see difficult conversations as difficult conversations. I just see it as a conversation, like, please enlighten me with a different thought other than my own. Like that leads to actual conversation. If we're having the same exact conversation that we both agree on, we're done. Like, what else is there to talk about?
Amen, sister.
Thank you for the applause, right? This is something that we would teach in improv a lot. Like my performers would get really frustrated with like, the audience has just given us the same suggestion that the audience gave us last night. I'm like, great. They gave you the same suggestion. Just do it differently tonight.
Yeah, do it better tonight.
Right? Take a different stab at it. Like if you're bored, then get unbored. Like find something new with it, break it, and build it all over again. Anyway, I can go off on it.
We didn't get to talk about the improv. No. And you know what else we didn't get to talk about? Susanna, I lived with a Brit for most of my 20s. It was a friend of mine from college, and we built our careers together. And so, yeah, I was really appreciating the
British accent
banter about the US versus Brits, and spent many an hour digging into that one.
So much more to come.
Will you come back to the show?
I would love to come back to the show.
Fantastic. So Nian, obviously our producer, listens to this, so he will have a directive to get you back on the show. And I know, Susanna, you're dying to ask a question.
What? You know what? Because we had one earlier, quite a sensible one actually, about relationships. Would you rather? I'm going to come up with a bit of a silly one now, because I feel we've had the serious one. I mean, this is weird. This is weird, but us Brits, we can be a bit odd. So, for you, Amy, would you rather chew your toenails or someone else's fingernails?
Okay, do I have to remove the toenail with my own mouth?
That is up to you. Which one?
I mean, I gotta trust in my own hygiene, so I'll take the toenail for 1,000. Please, final answer.
Yeah.
Somebody else's fingernails, like when people, instinctively people wash their hands, like, and we're in a pandemic here.
Show.
I'm with Amy.
This show has just gone from sexy to gross.
Frickin'.
Did we get? Was the bourgeois photo? Was that before we hit record, or was that at the beginning? Just to bring it back to sexy.
Stay tuned.
Oh.
We can be sexy. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you, Gina.
But I'm with Amy on that. I'm not chewing someone else's fingernails.
Yeah. No, I'm with you too. It's good to know, right? That's a conversation that, you wouldn't have every day.
That wasn't an uncomfortable conversation. That was just weird.
No.
That was just weird.
And no one's ever asked me if I would chew on my toenails in any capacity. So it was a first, and I like first too.
Hey,
I'm memorable.
Amy, if people want to reach out to you, get connected with you, what are the best ways to do that?
Well, for starters, I would definitely say check out the show. I'm also at revenuereal.com. And so there's that. LinkedIn is a phenomenal way to reach me. If you can figure out how to spell my last name. But once you get past that, it's like a non-issue, because there's not many of me's out there. And then we are, I guess it's official now, but building out the Andy Paul scene as well. So anybody that's getting involved in that land, I'll be very active over there.
Very, very, very cool. Well, it was awesome having you on the show today. We hope you had just as much fun as we did.
Oh my gosh, I had a blast, and I can't wait to do it again. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.
And listeners, it was a pleasure meeting everybody.
Pleasure meeting you.
Hey, Warners, thank you for listening to this episode of The Women Your Mother Warned You About, brought to you by Sales Gravy. I don't even think we had a chance to introduce ourselves, but by now you know that I'm Gina Tremarco with my amazing co-host, Susanna Gray Jones. Any final words, Susanna?
Yes, said very sexily. No, but keep your sexy, and good night.
We're out of here.
Bye.
Okay, but I'm keeping my pants on.